Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of my Counseling Skills and Techniques podcast and video series. My name is Dr. Amber Hughes. In this episode, I am talking about reflecting feelings. Leading up to this, we have been talking about both counselor characteristics required for effective counseling, as well as the counseling skills that form the very basis of counseling. Reflecting feelings is a skill that leads us into the more advanced counseling skills. So first, why do we reflect feelings? Reflecting feelings does a bunch of stuff in the counseling relationship and for our clients. First, client gains the awareness of the emotions surrounding a topic when we reflect feelings. A lot of times, clients aren't aware of the feelings that they have. Maybe they haven't put a name to those feelings. Maybe they just haven't taken the time to think about them. And so when we reflect feelings, it allows them to acknowledge the feelings that they have that are surrounding the issue that they've come to us about or that they're talking to us about. It brings the client to deeper levels of self-disclosure. And so a lot of times when I talk about counseling, I talk about it in like an upside down bell curve. Okay, so whenever we're first starting to talk to a client, we're at the surface level, right? We're using our basic skills. We're getting to understand the facts and the thoughts surrounding the issue. And then we go a little bit deeper. We want to go a little bit deeper with the client. We want to understand more of what's going on kind of behind the scenes or underneath the surface of the issue. And so when we reflect feelings, it allows us to dig a little bit deeper with that issue, to understand it a little bit more. And when we understand things a little bit more, and the reason why we do this, the reason why we're trying to deepen that understanding is because it helps us get at the underlying issue and the underlying issues surrounding the issue. And so sometimes feelings are kind of complicate matters a little bit. They kind of make issues more intricate. And so when we have that better understanding, we can better prepare the techniques and the interventions and the skills that we want to use to help bring our client to some sort of change or resolution regarding the issue. It also deepens the relationship between the client and counselor. So we talked about that therapeutic relationship before, and feelings helps us do that. And so when we have that moment where we're acknowledging feelings, it really helps further and deepen that relationship that you have. It also brings relief. So sometimes just putting a name to something, just acknowledging those feelings is helpful in and of itself. And so maybe you can think of a time where you were just, I know, like with myself, I hold stress and anxiety in my body a lot of times. That's just kind of where it lives in me. And so what happens is when I get really stressed, I start to have headaches, I start to have backaches and neck aches, my eye starts twitching, which drives me up the wall. And so a lot of times when I'm not really tuning into myself, the stress starts to affect me and I don't realize what it is. And so it puts me in a bad mood. I start to get grumpy. I start to take out my feelings and my stress on the people around me. But when I take that moment to identify what's going on, acknowledge the stress, realize that it's stress, understand why I'm stressed, and then really work to do something about it, that brings relief. So again, just acknowledging that I'm feeling stressed, that I'm anxious, in and of itself can bring the relief. And then I can take steps to make some changes to try and work at what's causing the stress. We also talk about emotional intelligence in the counseling field, and reflecting feelings helps us increase emotional intelligence in our clients. Emotional intelligence first is the ability to identify and manage your own emotions and the emotions of others. It involves 3 skills. First, just awareness of emotions, and so reflecting feelings can help bring about that awareness. The next step is the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving. And so once we take the time to identify or reflect feelings, we can then help our clients do something with that. Okay, so we can help them figure out what they can do with those emotions, figure out what they can do with that anxiety they're feeling, and help them move forward. The third skill that emotional intelligence also involves the ability to manage emotions. And so this is critical with some of our clients. Sometimes it's just a matter of acknowledging emotions. So if you have a client who's grieving, sometimes you just need to reflect feelings and acknowledge those emotions and let your client feel that grief, right? There's not necessarily, especially early on in the grieving process, there's not necessarily much more that a client needs to do, okay, with some feelings. Sometimes it's just about acknowledging them and feeling them. Other times, especially in cases of anxiety and stress, being able to manage emotions is critical in order for clients, especially clients who have those, who have anxiety disorders. It's critical for them to be able to manage those emotions, and so to take things one step further. Emotional intelligence is really something that is becoming kind of a hot topic. I was just reading an article about how one school's teaching students to be more emotionally intelligent, with the thought that it will help them do better in school. And as counselors, that's something that I know we can get on board with, because that's the purpose of school counselors, right? Is to help students with their emotional problems, understanding that their mental health does impact their ability to perform in school. So some other things about reflecting feelings, it conveys to your client that you recognize how they are affected by their challenges. Okay, so again, when we think about what reflecting feelings does, it does some things to help our clients, but it also does some things to help the client-counselor relationship. So it conveys to your client that they're being heard on a deeper level. So those basic skills that we talked about last time, like paraphrasing and encouraging, lets the client know we're listening. This lets them know we're listening, and also that we understand a little bit. It involves listening and then expressing in one's own words the emotions stated by the client. So it's a fairly simple skill in terms of its structure. Where it becomes more complex is, first of all, for more complex emotions, but also because it requires us to be emotionally intelligent. And so this goes along with what we've talked about before, where a lot of times as counselors, we don't realize the amount of work we have to do with ourselves, within us, in order to be effective counselors. And so we have to be okay with emotions. We have to be comfortable with emotions. We have to be able to name emotions and identify them, which is sometimes a challenge. It involves both explicit and implicit messages. So the explicit messages are what we see, right? Sometimes it's fairly easy to identify emotions, to identify the feelings that someone's feeling. Sometimes we have clients who don't express emotions, or they're expressing wrong emotions. Maybe they're laughing when they should be crying. And so that involves us to identify more implicit messages. So we're having to make some assumptions there about what they should be feeling or what they might be feeling. It's a lot. It requires empathy, right? So reflecting feelings and empathy go hand in hand, because we have to understand the client's worldview and perspective and how they might be experiencing something in order to effectively reflect feelings. It's hard. Why is it so hard? Because it requires tapping into the unexpressed a lot of times. You're going to have clients who are very expressive, and that's great, but more often than not, you're going to have clients who are unexpressive. So they aren't expressing feelings, or again, they're expressing the wrong feelings. They may be expressing anger instead of fear. And I think we see this a lot. I tend to call anger the mask, the emotion, the mask feeling, because it masks other feelings that we have. Anger tends to be more acceptable, especially for men and boys. So it's the acceptable emotion. It's acceptable to be angry. It's not acceptable to be scared, to be hurt, to be embarrassed, right? And so sometimes anger masks these other feelings people might be having, and so we have to dig a little bit deeper. Our culture, upbringing, and family background has a lot to do with our own expression of feeling and how we see and understand emotions. So this is where, again, we have to do our own work and understand ourselves in order to best counsel the person in front of us, because we have to be aware that sometimes maybe how we are viewing a situation could be different, right? So let me think of an example. For example, in my family, we tend to use humor often very inappropriately to manage emotions and to cope. So it's not in and of itself a bad thing, but it's different than other people. And so there are times where in difficult situations, someone is typically going to crack a joke in my family. And so you might catch us laughing at times where we shouldn't be, certainly shouldn't be joking. And that's part of my family. And so that has led me to be more uncomfortable with other emotions, because we use humor as a coping mechanism, but also as a way to mask other feelings. And so other feelings are sometimes difficult for me to reflect, not identify. I've certainly gotten to a point where I'm comfortable identifying different emotions, and I can identify those in myself, but sometimes reflecting feelings is a challenge for me because I don't want to go there, right? My go-to is to avoid those feelings and to try to make myself feel better. And sometimes that's not what we want to do. That's not what we want our clients to do. If you have a client who's sitting in front of you and they're going through something difficult, and you can see that they're maybe starting to tear up or starting to get more emotional. If you're not comfortable with emotions, your go-to may be to crack a joke, or to change the subject, or to really try and make the person in front of you feel better, which again, in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's just not what we want to do in counseling. We don't necessarily want to make them stop feeling those feelings. Sometimes the purpose of counseling is to encourage the expression and feeling of emotions, right? Not to stop it. It's hard because it can bring up some emotions in us. If you tend to be a crier, or you tend to be someone who is very empathetic, whenever you have a client who's feeling some very strong feelings, it can be challenging to reflect feelings because you may have your own emotions that are kind of bubbling to the surface, and so it can really be a challenge. Especially in certain situations where maybe you have a very difficult client, or you have a very good relationship with a client, and they're feeling something strong, and you are in the moment with them, and so that's something we want to be careful with, because we don't want it to be about us, right? We don't want counseling to be about us. It should be about the person in front of us, and so we really have to be able to manage our own emotions in order to effectively reflect feelings. Some problems with reflecting feelings. So first of all, just asking the client, how do you feel? And so that tends to be our go-to, right? When we're counseling, how do you feel about that? We want to be careful with that. Most people can't tell us how they feel. Certainly you're going to have clients who are more emotionally aware, and that's great. But if you're working with kids, chances are they're going to struggle with that. So just be careful with asking that question. Waiting too long. If someone's told you something and they've moved past the feeling, it's not going to be very powerful, and so you may want to wait to reflect a feeling. Turn the reflection into a question. That's different than asking, how do you feel? So with a reflection of feeling, we simply reflect a feeling. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's as simple as you feel sad. And when we say you feel sad, we give the client an out. So if they're not wanting to talk about feelings, they can say, no, I don't, I'm okay, I'm fine, right? So don't turn it into a question. They can correct you, certainly. And that's going to be different than you feel sad or you felt sad. Is that right? Then they can say yes or no, and then they can correct you, right? So you're still getting at feelings. But if you turn it into a question, you're allowing them to say, no, I'm fine. Combining a reflection and a question. And I think we do this with a lot of our skills where we pair skills up. We paraphrase and we reflect, and we end with a question. What this does is it allows the client to choose one skill to respond to. When we reflect feelings, we want them to respond to the feeling. If we pair it with a question or another skill, they can choose to answer the question and avoid the feelings. Focusing on the wrong person. Your mom sounds like your mom was angry. We don't necessarily care about how the mom felt. We care about the person in front of us. So make sure you're reflecting feelings for the person in front of you. Letting the client ramble. Again, when we're reflecting feelings, we want to get at the feelings. And so it's really about focusing and helping your client focus in on emotions and try not to avoid them. Using the word feel instead of think. I know I'm guilty of this all the time. A lot of times we mean think whenever we say feel. I feel like I could go for some potato chips. I feel like I could go for a run. I feel like, right, I'm not really feeling that. That's not an emotion. I'm thinking that. I think I want some potato chips. I think I want to go for a run, okay? So be careful, especially in the counseling setting, of using feel instead of think. It's going to confuse things. Undershooting and overshooting the feelings. Sometimes it's going to be hard. This is where it's helpful to know a lot of feeling words on one hand so that we can get the right feeling word in there. Let's say a client just lost their parent, and you say, it sounds like, that would make you feel sad. Yes, duh, of course they feel sad, right? That doesn't quite get at the level of what they're feeling, I'm guessing. It's probably going to be more like devastated or lost or alone. So really make sure that you are working on your own emotional intelligence and kind of getting a good repertoire of feeling words so that you can use the appropriate feeling word in situations. Parroting, when we're simply just reflecting back what the client said. That's more along the lines of paraphrasing. It's not really reflecting feelings. So if your client says they're stressed and you say you feel stressed, that's not getting deeper. If we want to reflect feelings in that moment, then you need to reflect another feeling, something that's maybe getting a little deeper. Long reflections is similar to pairing multiple skills and also waiting too long. So whenever you ramble, whenever you start to turn your reflection of feeling from a sentence into a paragraph, then you missed it. You missed the moment. And finally, only focusing on the negative. A lot of times when we're counseling, we focus on the more negative emotions, and that's something we want to try not to do. We also want to focus on the positive, reflect positive feelings. It sounds like you were happy. It sounds like you were excited. It sounds like you're in love, right? So there are a lot of positive emotions out there that we also want to reflect. Okay, so how do we reflect feelings? It's simple. You feel sad, okay? A more advanced reflection of feeling is going to be to pair a feeling with a paraphrase. You feel sad because your dog died. Very simple, okay? It involves 2 steps. First, identifying the feeling and then making a statement that reflects it. So I want to end with a practice. What I'm going to do is read several scenarios, okay? I'm going to wait a couple seconds and I'm going to let you respond with a reflection of feeling, okay? If you're somewhere, if you're at a desk or somewhere, you can write the reflection of feeling down, or you can just say it out loud, okay? If you're watching this in the video form, you might want to turn the video off or close your eyes, because you're not going to be able to read a reflection or a statement from a client. You're only going to be able to hear. And so it can be helpful just to listen to me, so that you get used to reflecting feelings just by listening to what the client's saying. All right, there's several of them, so bear with me. This is good practice, though. It'll be good practice for your role plays. So this is Aaron. There I was, standing in front of the entire assembly, and I froze. Everyone was staring at me. My heart was pounding, and I started to shake. I thought I was going to die right there on the spot. I can never show my face again after that. Okay, moving on. Hannah. And for the third time in a row he failed to show. What a jerk. My daughter looks forward to those outings with her father, and I hate to see him treat her this way. Don't you think he's a jerk? All right, next we have Jody. I can't wait to go to Europe with the French Club. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, yet it's going to be expensive. In addition to the obvious things, I'm going to need spending money too. I would have to bring my boyfriend something. I don't know how I am going to come up with all the money I need. Next we have Seth. The more I do, the more the boss seems to expect. He's never satisfied and is always finding fault. I think I should start looking for another job because I can't take it anymore. Now we have Sonia. I can't believe I trusted my sister-in-law. She is such a backstabbing witch. I hate her. She'd start bad-mouthing my mother-in-law and get me going. Then, after she got me saying negative things, I found out she was going back and repeating everything I said to her. Now my mother-in-law hates me. Here we have Steve. We just moved here and I'm working 2 jobs, but somehow I've got to find time to take my kids to their schoolmates' houses so they can get to know people and have some friends. I just don't seem to have time. Here we have Thomas. My son keeps staying out late at night with his friends. He won't tell me where he goes. I'm afraid he'll get hurt. He's probably able to take care of himself, but I just don't know what to do. Okay, that's it. I'm going to end soon. So if you want to go back and practice, you can rewind and listen to these last scenarios. Make sure, especially if you wrote these down, that what you did was actually reflect feelings and not do a paraphrase or respond to something else that the client was saying in these different scenarios. So At this point, we're not solving problems. We're not doing anything but reflecting feelings. So again, and I'll post the PowerPoint for you, but if you want to review the scenarios that are on the PowerPoint, or you can go back and listen to them again. But this is good practice, and I want you to make sure that what you did was reflect feelings in these situations, okay? Bye-bye.